Hello friends. This week I hope you are enjoying the beautiful weather outside, a little warmer temperatures coming. So it's beginning to feel a little like spring. It's also getting us closer to Easter and Holy Week as we travel through this season of Lent. This week we arrive at the second half of Luke chapter 22. Which includes Jesus praying on the Mount of Olives, the arrest of Jesus, Peter's denial outside the house of the high priest, and then Jesus being brought before the council of elders, priests, and scribes, the religious council, before they send him on to Pilate. So here are a few of my thoughts on this passage and these events that it describes. Let's begin with the actions of Peter. At the very beginning of the reading, Peter swears that he is ready to go to jail and even die with Jesus. He really believes that too, bless his heart, as we say. But Jesus says that in reality, Peter will deny Jesus 3 times before this night is even done. And that, of course, becomes the reality. It does make me think, though, about sin, the choices we make, and what Calvin once said, something along the lines that sin is always a choice, but it is also inevitable. Interesting thought. Or the Apostle Paul's quote in Romans that, quote, "I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very things I hate instead." We have great intentions, but we do the wrong thing anyway. Or St. Bernard's supposed quote that the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So do you think that Peter had a choice in what was about to happen? I mean, he thinks he's going to have a choice. He thinks he's going to be able to do the right thing, and yet Jesus seems to know differently. And was this always just part of the plan then? Was it Peter's choice, or was it always part of the plan? And of course, that also leads us to the same questions about Judas. Did he have a choice? If not, should he be held responsible? Or do we have a vision of God's workings that people always do have a choice, but somehow, in a mystery to us, God's plan takes those choices into account? Definitely a serious topic there, some serious deep thoughts. My own take would be that instead of this being some sort of a fatalistic thought, it does give us hope. That in spite of our mistakes and our bad choices, God's plan for us will still be worked out. Something else I notice in Luke's telling of these stories is that they vary a little from gospel to gospel. Luke's telling is a little different than Matthew's or Mark's or John's for that matter. And in one noticeable way that they are different, Luke portrays Jesus as never really being alone, even in the midst of his suffering. For example, when Jesus is praying up on the Mount of Olives, Luke says that an angel appeared and gave him strength. And as the story moves along, as you get into the readings of the next chapter or 2 chapters, Luke will tell about a sympathetic crowd that followed Jesus as they were moving the cross. So he wasn't even alone out on the road. There's an understanding criminal that's hung next to Jesus, and they begin having this conversation together. And even there is a sympathetic centurion guarding the cross who sees what is happening and says, surely this was an innocent man. Mark, by contrast, seems to point out Jesus' feelings of abandonment during his suffering. There's no one with him while he is praying. No angel shows up. He is all alone. And Mark says that Jesus was distressed and agitated while he was in the garden. And most importantly, just before he dies, Jesus says famously, my God, why have you forsaken me. But perhaps both of these things can be going on at the same time. As Jesus suffered and struggled during those days, and as we face suffering and difficulties ourselves, there can certainly be a feeling sometimes that we are terribly alone. Why, God? Why is this happening? Where are you, God? Or perhaps the doctor tries to reassure us that we are not the only ones who have gone through this particular diagnosis, that there are lots of people who have dealt with this, but we don't actually know any of those people, so we still feel quite alone. Or when we lose someone who has been close to us for so long and we can no longer now sit next to them or hear their voice or feel their warmth, or when we go out to eat, we have to do it without them now. Or when we are struggling with something and are reluctant or embarrassed to talk with someone about it, to share, to be together. And at the same time, even in our suffering and our struggles, we may find that we are not alone. We may find little signs that God is around, that God is present with us. And God may provide an earthly angel when we need some strength to get us through. There are people around who understand what we are going through, perhaps even a whole crowd of people walking the path with us. So perhaps feeling profoundly alone, but also finding sources of presence and community are both things that we experience in our suffering. What do you think? Well, I hope that you find that this reflection and our being together for a moment here is a moment of connection and presence in whatever you are going through this week. So go in peace. Amen.